Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the Wisdom in Christ podcast. Today I am here with Michael Love, my very good friend and fellow musician. Today we are planning to talk a little bit about music, but also we might talk a little bit about law. You've been learning a lot in your studies and in your reading. So it's going to be a good day, good podcast, and I'm excited to get started here. So Michael, what is your newest music project, and what does that look like here in town?
I've got like 10 musical projects going. So I got a collection of cover songs that I learned, and I got my original music. I'm learning accordion. So the better question would be, what's your most recent obsession? And I haven't. I've acquired an unhealthy obsession for playing the accordion.
Okay.
My neighbors are about to enter in some lawsuits against me for disturbing the peace on that thing. My friend Jason calls it the honking machine because you can make some really obnoxious sounds with that device.
Well, that would be one legendary lawsuit if that's, if that happens.
Yeah.
So.
And every time the wind picks up, it's like in my blood. I have to play the Song of Storms from Legend of Zelda.
Oh.
And I'll just go for hours if the wind is blowing.
That is actually one of my favorite songs ever.
Yeah.
The Legend of Zelda.
Your brother played it yesterday at the coffee shop. It was legendary. It was awesome.
Yeah, The Legend of Zelda has some of the best music ever.
Yes,
it's
does.
So good.
Agreed.
I forgot the name of the writer of it all, but he is really, really good at what he does.
Koji Kondo.
Yes, Koji Kondo. Yes. Oh man, genius.
Musical genius.
So you've got Michael's Love Music and Friends. Is that the
Loves Music and Friends?
Loves Music and Friends.
Yeah, so lovesmusicandfriends.com. It shows the calendar of all the live music events that we book through my new booking agency. And that's really new right now. So I got about 10 artists signed up and 3 venues, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to hopefully get every venue and every musician in town on it, and just to promote more live music, more wholesome music.
No, I love it, man. I've played at the coffee shop 2 times now because of the kind of the system that you set up, and it's been really cool to play live music and to share, the gospel through music, and to play some of my favorite songs, just even normal, just pop songs. Mm-hmm. I guess, I don't know if pop song would be...
Pop's the right word. That's what I call it. Yeah, songs that are recognizable is what I call pop.
Yeah, so it's been super cool, man, for me, and I really like the idea of just having artists on there, and then different, either coffee shops or restaurants being able to actually book these artists, because it really is a win-win for everybody, and I've experienced it for myself, like I said, playing twice, and it's cool. So
yeah, and it's all free of charge. It's just something I feel that there's a need in the economy. We've been investigating, me and some friends, fellow musicians, we've been investigating why don't we hear more live music, because usually 10 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, if you ask people, they'll say they prefer live music to recorded music. They'd rather listen to a live musician over listening to a radio playing in the background. So why don't we hear it more often when we sit down to dinner? How come there's not someone playing the guitar? And there's reasons. We've been finding out those reasons. A lot of it is the licensing agencies of Hollywood. They enter into lawsuits against people who play their copyrighted music. So it's kind of put restaurant owners on edge about inviting musicians, because they can't control those musicians and what they play, but the restaurant owner is liable. So by me creating this company, I assume the liability, but then I also got to train the musicians to lean towards original music that's not copyrighted. So then on the back end of that, we're creating our own copywriting licensing agency, so we can collect original music from local artists and then license them out and help artists collect their royalties.
No, that's really cool, man. I love the idea, especially the emphasis on original music, because I think a lot of musicians, when they go play at live places, they think, oh, well, I'm just going to play songs that people know, which is okay. Like, yeah, people are going to respond positively to it. But think how many more musicians would actually be growing and developing as artists if they were encouraged to actually play their own music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge subject. So I could get into it, but I'll avoid the rabbit hole for the sake of our audience because they may not be interested in that topic. But original music versus pop music. It's hard to hook an audience on your original music. The audience wants to hear something they recognize, something they can sing along to and dance to, and so it's really hard to get the audience interested on your original music. But that's the problem is when we play the recognizable songs, really, it's legitimate. We're taking someone else's intellectual property and kind of not giving them due credit or royalties when we just sing their songs. So it's really a fair deal to either pay them the royalties or sing your own original songs.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100%. So I guess like one of the things that I've also noticed though, with original music is that people aren't quite as confident sometimes with their own original music. And so it kind of fosters, like, I think people might get into the music more in restaurants if they weren't playing stuff that they weren't confident in playing because they're worried about what people are going to think of their own original songs. Mm-hmm. So there's an extra layer of, oh, well, I'm just going to go to what's easy, what I know for sure people are going to like, mm-hmm. And so I do like this idea of encouraging artists to play their original music because it's going to develop artists more. Mm-hmm. It's going to encourage them to be confident in their music and to learn how to perform those songs in a way where the audience actually gets into it, Uh-huh. So I could see how in a lot of ways it would be extremely beneficial to handle it that way, Yeah. I'm going to step back so I'm in the camera a little bit better because I'm kind of off to the side here. So cool.
Yeah.
Just for our audience here, right? Uh-huh. So yeah, I like that idea, man. So with the whole thing of restaurants having copyright laws, so is this kind of where you started getting into studying law?
Oh, man. So this is just a very recent thing, studying law. It's been like the shell started to crack open for me. And really, I read a book called Defend American Freedom. And I would recommend that book to anyone. So if you've ever heard of the book or if you haven't, look it up. Defend American Freedom. And it's an interesting book from the perspective of a guy who is kind of a gypsy, probably you kind of assume that he's like a pothead because he illustrates or his illustrator kind of draws some pictures and you see him with dreadlocks and he's like in an old busted down van like cruising across the country and you kind of assume he's kind of a renegade of society, but he went ahead and educated himself on the law to the point where he's driving around without a driver's license, without car insurance, without registration, but he is in his legal right. He has a certifiable knowledge of the law. And when he gets arrested wrongfully, he goes ahead and files a lawsuit against the government and collects his $1 million settlement for kidnapping, for sex trafficking. Like, if they frisk you, if you're unlawfully arrested and they frisk you, you have a lawsuit for sex trafficking. Like, and that's a legitimate thing, and you can win those cases because there are corrupt police, like we were talking about before we started recording. There are corrupt people in the government, but that's our tool to leverage them back into their proper place using the courts and stuff. So the book really just all of a sudden opened my eyes. It was like, whoa, this is the doorway into what I've been missing my entire life. And so I've gone really deep just recently into studying law. And then all of a sudden it solidified what's the purpose of this music endeavor. Because, I've been working on encouraging music in our community for a few years now. But it, in the back of my mind, I'm like, what really is the point of all this. I feel an inner drive and an urge to do it, and my best friends are all musicians, just for whatever reason, and so we're trying to make music happen. But there's been this reservation of like, what is really the purpose? What is really the point? What's the value? And then when I read this book, it's like it opened the doorway to the knowledge, and the knowledge is crystallizing what the purpose is, and it's become so poignant for me to really have a grasp of why it's important to get live music going again. So the legality is what evil people and corrupt people have used against the common people. They've used the law against us. So if we're uneducated about the law, we will be victimized by those who use the law. But there's nothing preventing us common people from using the law, from writing our own contracts. It's an inalienable right to write a contract and enter into contract with other parties. So what we usually, as the uneducated public, what we usually end up getting is the short end of the stick, because someone else will offer us a contract with all this fine print, and for whatever reason, in various circumstances, we don't know what we're really signing, and we just sign it. My friend Brandon was just telling me, man, when I'm looking at this lengthy contract, sometimes I just want to sign it just to get it over with, and so I don't even read it. But that's the tool that certain people in power will use against us. They'll put all this fine print in, get our signature, and then we are legally bound to the terms of those contracts. But we have the power to actually create our own contracts, and it's our inalienable right. So the common people should be entering into contract with one another. That's the power. That's the power of cohesiveness, the power of working together. These huge conglomerate companies that some will say are evil. I won't necessarily say they're evil, but they definitely know the power of contract and of teamwork. They work together through contract. And that's how you form these huge, like, Hollywood companies that license millions of songs and then go around suing anyone who uses those songs. They're working in teams. And then they got all of us idolizing this lone wolf mentality. You know, in our culture, they've glorified the lone wolf. But in reality, that's suicide. A lone wolf is committing suicide. A lone wolf doesn't survive. So in our culture, they've glorified this lone wolf thing and got us all as lone wolves. And they take advantage of us in that way. But if us lone wolves actually form pacts through contract, then we take our power back. And when we learn to use the law and use the courts to leverage the government back into its proper place and leverage these huge companies back into their proper place, that's how we resolve the problem.
So do you feel like this is what happens with record labels a lot, where you hear people, oh, I signed my life away to this record label. I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't realize what this contract really meant, and just how much power they were going to have over my life and my finances and all these different things. So is that a tool that's commonly used against especially up-and-coming musicians that have talent, that have gifts, and they're kind of targeted? Would you say that's true? And what does that look like? How do you feel about that?
It looks like this. Full body yes.
Yes?
Full body yes. Absolutely. That's what happens. I have a personal friend who lives here in Vernal, and he won a talent competition when he was young. And he's playing his guitar, and he's on fire, and he's passionate, and he's talented, and he's good, and he wins the competition. They whisk him off on tour. He's touring with these other big-name musicians, and then at one point they offer him this contract and say, hey, we really like this song you wrote. Let's go record it. And they get him to sign the contract. They go into recording studio. They record his song. He didn't realize they just took both his what it's called the composition copyright and the master recording copyright. They took his intellectual property. You might say they stole it, but in reality, he signed it away because of his lack of education. And that song went on to make somebody else millions of dollars. It became a #1 hit, but he got nothing out of it. He got nothing. He signed it away. That's what they do left and right. Hundreds, millions of talented young artists who don't know any better, they sign away. And so when you look at like the 27 Club, these artists that die young, what happens is They get them young, sometimes teenagers, and they get them in these contracts. They sign away their intellectual property, and then they sign the contract that makes them bound to do a certain number of concerts. So they're on tour, and they have to perform every Friday, every Saturday, and then they're moving, and then they do concerts in between. And these are big, big shows. It takes a lot of energy, and they're overworked. They're completely overworked, and so then they get them on drugs to keep up with the work demand. And then eventually they're overworked and overdose, as is very often the case. And so the American public is kind of aware that there's a problem. Like, why are these young, talented artists dying left and right? And it gets even worse than that, because once they die, then their music becomes top of the charts. You know, when an artist dies, then all of a sudden their music is more popular, right? And then Hollywood is making even more money off the dead artist, because they didn't even leave it to their own parents or their own siblings. They signed it away to these Hollywood companies, and that's how this Hollywood monster has gotten so big. And
yeah, that's really unfortunate, man. And it's sad to see how many people fall for it because, like you said, of a lack of education on the matter, and being young and wanting to be important and wanting to have like a good source of income and wanting to be paid for your music, which in the world of music, you know, a lot of up and coming artists, the idea of actually being able to have a sustainable income from their music is like the hardest thing for them in their minds to make a reality.
yes,
You know, and so they're kind of in the situation where the desire is so strong that they're just, a lot of them probably just kind of fall for it, you know. So that's sad to see. So what can we do? First of all, you are reading books on American law. So what can we do as people to help educate ourselves? Like reading, what does it look like to help protect against this problem?
Yeah, that's the thing, no one can do it for you. No one can protect your rights. It came up in that original book. It says if the court offers you an attorney, a court-appointed attorney, keep in mind that attorney cannot defend your rights. They can't actually stand up for your rights. Only you as an individual can stand up for your rights. So no one can educate me against my will. No one can force me into contract against my will. So the solution is education. And that's why it's so difficult, because especially when people are overworked and burdened, most people are victims to economic slavery, sad to say today. Most people, they're working at least 40 hours a week, and every hour that they're not at work, they have other obligations. They got to get their kids to school. They got to be at the PTA meetings. They got to be at their church meetings. They got to be cooking dinner. They got to be cleaning the house. They do not have time to sit down with a book that's this thick, that's only the introduction. And so that's the difficult hurdle to overcome. But education is the key. So there may be things we got to sacrifice. You got to block out 20 minutes a day so you can read. That's probably what you got to do. Block out as much time as you can to start reading. Because for me, it's changing my life every day. I wake up and read for a couple of hours, and every day I'm feeling more empowered, and more committed, and more optimistic that there is a way out of this. Because most of my life, I've felt like it's a hopeless mess. This whole world is a hopeless mess. You know, we're a slave class. We're an economic slave class. We have to work and work and work until we die, and we never really get to do what we feel is in our hearts that we're meant to do. And and I think a lot of people just feel hopeless. My friend Brandon was kind of expressing that this week. He's like, I don't see the way out. I'm just trying to, do the grind and with as much happiness as I can muster up, but it's a hopeless mess. And now that I'm learning this stuff, even though it's a huge, huge topic, understanding law is massive. It's the biggest topic that I've gotten into. And there's so much to know. There's so much legal terms. But every page that I turn is empowering to my future and to my friends and to my family. Like I'm learning I'm finding the keys to unlock the shackles for me, for my children, even for my parents. It's like, Mom and Dad, you didn't realize what you signed. When we were born, they signed a birth certificate. That has lifelong consequences. And so it's like, but then you can rescind signatures. There's a legal process to rescind your signature. There's a legal process to say, I didn't know what I was signing, and so I'm gonna get out of this contract. We've all been entered into contracts since our birth. Our parents entered us into contracts against our knowing. And so now we're finding out that we can actually rescind those signatures. And it's a process. I'm learning how to do it. But it's a legal process. It's absolutely legal and good. And I think it's right that we all start to educate ourselves, come together, form contracts with one another, and take the power back. And then leverage the law, use the law as leverage to put the evil ones back into their corner.
So what do you think would happen if everybody started waking up in the morning and reading books? Like if they, like how you said you're taking 2 hours. I do the same thing, by the way. I wake up at 4 a.m. almost every day, and I read for almost 2 hours before I go to the workout every day. And it's empowering. It makes you feel like you have answers to your questions. It helps you, because you're getting actual answers to your questions, and you're gaining knowledge and growing in intelligence, and that intelligence makes you more effective as a person to serve your fellow man, but also to make sure that you don't, like you said, to protect yourself, or to make sure you're making better choices every day, based on that knowledge. So what do you think would happen if we all started reading books every day?
Our incomes would double. Because there are even the IRS will just kind of make you think you owe these taxes that if you had the right knowledge you wouldn't have paid in the first place. So everyone would be way more abundant and wealthy. It's absolutely incredible when you look at how much productivity has increased in 100 years. Prior to World War I, early 1900s, I read a statistic, and so I may be way off on this. For anyone who's watching, if you're fact-checking me, maybe off. But I heard and read that prior to that time, like 80% of people were farmers. 80% of people were engaged in agriculture, because that's how many people and how much work it took to produce food. You got to hitch up your oxen and drag it through the fields to plow your soil and put your seeds in. You got to go out there by hand with a shovel to dig things up. And today, less than 1% of people are engaged in agriculture, because technology has made it to where one man can produce 100 times as much as he could 100 years ago. Our computers, our tractors, our technology has made us more efficient. So where did all that extra abundance go? Why does it cost me half of my paycheck to go to the grocery store and buy the food? I should be able to buy food for 100th of the price that it cost 100 years ago. It should cost pennies to buy my food if the abundance was equally dispersed. So since mankind has come so far in the last 100 years, but yet people are still stretched financially, it shows that there is a major problem. Where is the abundance going? There should be 100 times as much abundance. You should be able to own 10 cars and eat as much food as you want and not have a concern at all, in theory. But all this extra abundance is going somewhere else, and we don't know where. So if people were more educated to manage their contracts, and if they avoided getting into contracts that gives them the short end of the stick, overnight, everyone would be doubly abundant. And that would be too. Just the beginning, because you'd be 100 times more abundant if it was proper.
So what about like this whole idea of, our financial system being controlled by central authorities, like how, we're off the gold standard, we have the Federal Reserve, yet our financial system and hyperinflation is like a huge problem. So do you feel like some of that abundance that we're experiencing and some of the growth that we're experiencing has been greatly diminished by the fact that we have essentially a corrupt financial system. Like, how do you feel about that?
I don't know enough about how it works. I don't know how the money systems work. I don't know how the banks operate. So I don't have a concise answer for that. But what comes to mind for me is just the basic fact that essentially those in power and those who run everything in this out of balance way amount to approximately or less than 1% of people. So you got the 1% and the 99%. The difference between those is those 1% know the power of contract, and they know how to use the law, and they know how to write these. They know how to legislate. These are the 1% who are legislators who run the things. They run the banks, they run the Federal Reserve, and then there's the 99% who just are uneducated. We're just ignorant. We just don't know how. We don't understand the system that we are a part of. And so if the 99% even became incrementally more educated, that 1% would have their power would go from this big to this big if the 99% got even just a little more knowledge behind them.
Yeah, I agree. And reading books is the first way to do that, you guys. If you want more power and more knowledge, because that's applied knowledge is power.
Here's an important thing.
Read books.
Yeah. Here's an important thing that I would say to the world. I feel like it's one of the most important things to say. The information that we get, almost all of the information that we get is usually paid for advertising projected at us through our phones. So we got, and a lot of us are on our, if we can see that we are part of that system, because if you go on Facebook and you're like, hey, I'm putting on an open mic night, I am going to put an ad on Facebook that targets these people, and I'm going to tell them that this is good for you to come to my open mic night. Like, even I am a part of that, the backside of this system where the information we get is projected to us through our phones, and the phones is just the newest way that it's happened, but for generations. The radio tells us about what science says. The TV tells us what science says. You got pharmaceutical companies advertising to us. And so actually most people think they have this unbiased knowledge that scientists say, but those scientists were paid to tell you, and the medium, whether that's the radio, the TV, or your phone, that's also paid to project this information to us. So a lot of people think they have this unbiased knowledge, and they think, oh, this is just the fact because the scientist said it and the radio told me, and the guy on the radio is really trustworthy because he thinks like me and talks like me, and they think they have an accurate knowledge. But all of that information was projected to us because it profits them, because it profits someone else. It's not good for us. So if we want real knowledge, we actually have to get physical books, especially old books. If you find an old book, that's gold, because you'll find even books and even publishing has become kind of whitewashed. They don't want us to know certain things. They don't profit from us knowing certain things, so they'll leave things out. So books,
yeah,
books.
Like there's a lot of really, really good old books out there, and good new ones too.
And the number one book, and I think you'd agree, the number one book, the Bible. It's the oldest record that we have. And as I read law, I'm learning that the original law has not changed. The law is the same law. It's just become more complex, more detailed, more intricate. But the Bible is the one book that goes as far back as any other document on the planet. It's the one book that they can't change. If there was an evil force who's out there trying to edit textbooks and edit the knowledge and try to leave out certain things, that's the one book they cannot change. Maybe the Book of Mormon you'd agree too, because it's so widely distributed in hard copy that if someone tried to change it, everyone with their hard copy would go, hey, that says something different all of a sudden. What's going on? The Bible is that book where it goes all the way to the beginning, as far back as any record that we have, and it states the law in 10 simple commandments right up in the beginning, and those are the foundation of today's law. And so yeah, hard copy books is where it's at.
Yep. And, by the way, you guys, a really, really good book to read, and I believe both of us have read this one, is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. People try to paint him out to be a con artist and stuff, but if you read his book and you apply his principles, you are going to be more successful. So you'll know them by their fruits.
Yep.
Like, who cares what people say about him? What he teaches is true. They're true principles.
Yep.
So
the other great book is Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I can't say enough good things about this book. It's basic human laws of how to get the most out of your relationships with people. If you want an unsuccessful relationship, then ignore all the rules in this book. Go ahead and criticize your friends and tell people what they're doing wrong and forget to acknowledge them. And then you'll have a very unsuccessful relationship. If you want to grow as a person, no man is an island. No man is truly an island. And it comes back to this contract thing. If we get in contracts, then we actually are forming a force. An army goes out to fight and conquer by working together. You don't just send soldiers out kind of at random on their own to defeat the enemy. If you want to have a force, you got to work together with other people. So How to Win Friends and Influence People is a life-changing book, because there's just basic rules of human relation that most people are screwing up every day.
Yep.
They're screwing them up because they want to be funny, because they think that getting laughs out of their friends is more important than getting respect and cohesion. And TV and radio and media has got us all thinking and behaving backwards. Maybe less so for you, because you weren't really raised on TV like a lot of us were. But the TV is all funny and laughs, and so it's kind of taught us some backwards social behaviors. We think that being funny is the most important thing sometimes, but that doesn't actually help us most of the time. So we got to learn the proper ways to deal with people.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for investing in other people, because there's a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I don't know if you've read that one. Mm-hmm. And it talks about emotional bank accounts. So like, people have an emotional bank account, and they can kind of sense if you're trying to like trick your way into like building a connection, like using tricks, using like little
flattery.
Yeah, like things that aren't real. But if you make real deposits into their emotional bank account, then that bank account, those deposits grow, and there's trust. And once there's trust, there's harmony. And once there's harmony, then you get a successful relationship, because that's what a successful relationship is a harmonious relationship. So yeah, I think that if you're like overly trying to be like too joking with people all the time, or you're trying to use like tricks to build that.
Yeah.
There's only one way to really do it, and that's to make real, sincere deposits into their emotional bank account.
Yep.
Through sincere behavior. And maybe that does mean a joke sometimes, but there has to be sincerity in it. And if you overdo any one thing and kind of just play the same string on your guitar over and over, it's going to get really annoying to people,
I got a friend who breaks the same string on the guitar over and over. He just really likes that pop sound of pulling that high E string, and it breaks again and again.
Oh, man, that's funny.
Can I go off on that word trust for just a second?
Yes.
Trust is a huge word, because it's got a legal context, and then it's got in our everyday usage context, and it's similar when you translate it. We have to have trust as people, especially when we enter into contract with others. Trust is the foundation of that, but the contract makes it more clear. What can I trust this person to do? It's in writing. They put their name on it. Now I can trust them to do that. So trust is important in interpersonal things. But then in a legal context, the word trust is a legal entity or document that you can put your possessions into, so that if you die or become incapacitated, your possessions and your wealth goes where you tell it to go. And this is one of the ways that the public has been left in the dark about how this works, and it's one of the ways that the lawyers essentially always get the best deal when someone dies if they didn't create a trust. So it's one of those things I'm learning is the most important thing to teach people. Put your stuff in trust. So I've already created my own trust, and it's as simple as, and that's the thing, lawyers will tell you it's so complicated. You need an accountant, you need a lawyer, you need a consultant, you need a notary, you need all these things. And while all those things are helpful, a trust is as simple as writing down, this is my name, these are my possessions. When I die, I want my possessions to go to this person and that person, and this is the person I appoint to distribute my possessions. It's that simple. Put your name on it. It's good. That's a good trust in legal definitions. But if it's that weak, then there is room for people to come in after you die and say, hey, that guy owed me money. I want a piece of it. And so you got to settle debts. But other ways to make it more solid is get a notary, have a notary sign it with witnesses and stuff like that. So when they tell you it's complicated, you can put all these extra layers of protection on your trust to make it more solid. But it really is as simple as just writing it down with your signature. And then if you die or become incapacitated, then your stuff goes where you want it to go. If you don't create a trust, then when you die, what happens to your wealth is your estate goes into probate. And then probate is where all the debt collectors and all the lawyers can essentially milk your estate and take everything for themselves. And if you were a lawyer, you would argue with me on all this stuff. But to put it in layman's terms, that's what happens. And that's
right.
How the evil and corrupt get more rich and more rich because of our uneducation. If we don't know how to just write it down, this is what I want to happen to my car. This is what I want to happen to my collection of baseball cards, whatever it is that you own. It should go where you want it to go, and that's our right as American people, and it shouldn't be taxed like crazy. You can put it in a trust to where there's not a huge tax when it's changes hands. Yeah, so anyway, I wanted to mention that. I feel like it's one of the most important things that is really easy for people to do so that they can put their wealth where they want it to go. And it's never too early to create a trust. I'm 36, and I just finally created a trust. But it's never too early, but it can't be too late. You never know. You get in a car accident. Do you want a lawyer to get rich off of what you worked your whole life to create, or do you want your sibling or even your parents or your kids to get it? You don't
right.
want a lawyer to get it, just some stranger.
Yep. Or like, for example, if somebody has a sibling and the parents wanted a certain percentage of that money to go to one of the siblings and a certain percentage to go to the other sibling, but then once the parent dies and these two siblings maybe have had problems over the years and one of them gets a better lawyer and figures out how to get all of the money to where the other person doesn't get any of the inheritance, then that actually happens.
Yeah.
That happens to people where now all of a sudden even their own sister or whatever has all of the money from their parents because they had a better lawyer and there wasn't any legal contract written up by the parents to protect this from happening.
Yeah.
And then it puts people in some pretty, tough spots.
Yeah.
And sometimes people do unjustly lose what they justly should have, like what was rightly theirs, because of those reasons. So I think law is definitely something that most people are scared of. Most people don't have a lot of knowledge about. And most people could probably benefit a lot from learning more and applying some of these basic principles. And you probably wouldn't even have to read tons and tons of books to have a huge edge.
Any Christian person who reads the Bible has a basic understanding of the law. The law is based on that. And so it's my belief that especially as Christians, it's our actual duty to understand the law and to use it. We should use it.
Yep.
We should use the courts.
For good.
Yeah. And the more that we as good Christian people use the courts, the less the evil ones, can use it against us. And even things like probate. If everyone created a trust, there would really be no probate court, and these lawyers wouldn't be able to just sap out all of your life savings in, it's like $1,000 a week just to, what they'll do is like tell the court, oh, I just want to delay it another week. I'm going to collect $1,000 this week. and then in the next week, they fill out a paper that says, I'm going to delay it again for another week and collect $1,000 for that. And they'll just do that until there's no money left. They'll just bleed it dry. And if every American person just wrote a trust, then that really wouldn't even exist. There wouldn't be a probate court, and these probate lawyers wouldn't have a job. And I'm not saying it's an illegitimate job. It is a legitimate job because people don't create trusts. And so they have to go into probate to make sure debt collectors can collect what's rightly due to them. So if we, the American people, settle our own debts and put our wealth into trust, then we actually would put the wealth balance back into balance in a huge way.
I think so too. And honestly, I have a big belief as well in cryptocurrency because of the problem of centralized financial control over our monetary system. So even our cash is just constantly going down in value. So another way that we can kind of empower ourselves is with a lot of these cryptos, because a lot of cryptocurrencies are designed in such a way that they're kind of for the people, they're not controlled by central authorities. They can't be hyperinflated. And so basically what happens is it creates this scenario where people are able to have control over their finances and it's theirs. They own it. As long as they have the private key, not a single person on earth can ever get access to their funds. Like it's impossible for another entity to gain access to their funds because they hold the private key that is proof that they own it. Not only proof that they own it, but they're the only people that have access to it. So no third-party entity can come seize your assets. It's yours, 100% yours. And so I believe crypto is kind of another way, kind of like trust law, that it's able to bring some of that power back into the hands of the people where it should be. Because truth of the matter is that if there's too much centralized control and too big of government, and if they're in too much of our lives and too many aspects of our life, there's an imbalance there. Because the government is created by the people, for the people, right? Yeah. Not for the government.
Yeah.
And so there has to be that balance and that equilibrium where the government is big enough that it can handle things, but not so big that it becomes for the government and not for the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The government has become an instrument of, and I think it's just natural. The government is an instrument at the mercy and will of whoever uses it. And that's the thing. We got 1% of the people who are educated and use it. And then we got the masses of people who don't use it. And so we're victimized by it. But it's for us, and it is in our power to go and vote and use it. And so this leads us to, if you're open to it, it's leading me to this whole other subject.
Yes.
Of voting and currency. And so if we were to sit back and just like the masses of people entertain this concept and this notion that we've got one vote that we can cast every 4 years. That is not a lot of power, right? And I think a lot of people feel powerless, like, oh, I only have one chance to vote every 4 years. I got one vote, and I don't think it even does a lot of good because there's 400 million people here also voting, so my vote is not very powerful, and I can only do it every 4 years. That is the biggest lie in the universe, because in reality, we have 1 million votes per second. I can go outside and tell people things, and that's the way of casting my vote. I can go and take my money and vote at the farmer's market instead of the Walmart, and that's a vote because I'm empowering the people who are growing food nearby. Our votes are limitless. We have so many votes. The way we behave, the type of labels we wear on our clothing, we're voting. The type of language we use, the type of apps we sign up for on our phone, the type of websites we visit. We're voting 1,000,000 times a second, but most people are just not. Either they're unconsciously voting for what the system told them to vote for, or they're just not voting at all because they don't realize they have these votes. Every dollar is a vote. So if I were to encourage people to think differently about voting, think of every dollar. In fact, think of every penny as a vote. What am I voting for? Do I want Walmart to be my new overlord, or do I want my neighbor who grows potatoes to be my partner? I'm going to vote for people who are in my favor. Vote for people who have your best interest in mind. Vote for people you know. Vote for people that you can look in their eyes and say, this person will watch my back in hard times. I'm going to vote for him to make sure he's got a roof over his head, to make sure he's got clothes on his back, because then when we hit hard times, there's going to be some camaraderie. He's going to look out for me. Rather than voting for Walmart, where most of that money goes to China, and that doesn't make sense to me. So, and then this other topic of right alongside voting and our concept of voting, we think we only have one vote every 4 years, when in fact we got 1,000,000 per second. Same thing with currency. And it's what you're talking about. We don't need to use the Federal Reserve notes. There is nothing in the law that says you have to use Federal Reserve notes. There may be tax things like, well, you got to pay property tax, and I'm learning more about that. There may be ways around it to where you don't actually have to use Federal Reserve notes, because as you're learning, you can use cryptocurrency. And then it's opened up this world for me to realize that currency takes 1,000,000 forms. Like right now, what I'm doing is I'm raising goats, and I'm renting those goats out as service to eat people's weeds. And so I can write a contract that says, I'm going to rent you my goats and you pay me $50 a month. Or I could write a contract that says, I'm going to rent you my goats and you give me a sack of potatoes. And then look, how does the government come in and try to tax that transaction? How does the government try to tax? What are they going to take, 2% of my goat? Like, they're going to have a very hard time doing it.
Some goat milk.
Yeah, they're going to have a hard time doing it. And that's really at the root of the thing is if they're not motivated by what they can get out of it, they'll probably leave it alone. You know, and so when we're overtaxed and overburdened and financially stretched, try to just think about, you know, and I'm speaking to our listeners, try to think about other forms of currency we can use besides the American Federal Reserve note, because it's an effed up currency anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems there that have emerged, especially just over time. It's gotten worse, you know, like, so. But yeah, so, and I don't know if you've heard this quote before, but George Washington actually said this, and I'm going to go ahead and read it right now because it makes a lot of sense. George Washington quote about paper money. Let me look it up so I don't get the wrong. So yeah, George Washington said, paper money has had the effect in your state that it will ever have, to ruin commerce, oppress the honest, and open the door to every species of fraud and injustice.
Wow.
So that gives you an idea of what happens when we have this dependency on paper money instead of how can we transact even outside of money? Like a contract is a form of currency. It's agreements of, I'm going to do this and you're going to do that. That's currency of action. Currency of, like you said, currency of our choices every day. You know, what are we doing? So currency is not just a piece of paper. And the more that you realize that, the more empowered you are as a person, because currency is everything.
Yeah.
It's energy.
Yeah. If we think of our time as currency, how do I spend my time? I mean, it comes with a major shift in the way of thinking. So I can't expect anyone to all of a sudden start thinking this way, especially when they are working 40 plus hours a week and paying their mortgage and all that. But I took a different path in life. I just decided early on, like, there's got to be another way, and I'm going to find it. I just cannot sign up for debt slavery. And so I started thinking this way, and I started thinking of my time as currency, and I thought, well, rather than just do a job to trade for money, what if I use my time in ways that I just can see matters, that I could just see that thing needs to be done. I'm just going to do it and let the universe pan out the debts. And so I started sweeping sidewalks. I just was, I was hitchhiking, and I had come to Vernal just kind of transient, and I saw that these sidewalks are dirty. And I'm like, man, it's kind of dirty around here. So I walked into this motel and said, can I borrow a broom? And they're like, sure. So they hand me a broom, and I start sweeping. I swept the sidewalk and returned the broom and went on my way. I came back the next day, and there was garbage on the ground. And so I borrowed the same broom and swept it up. After like a couple of weeks of this process, this guy comes down and says, he sees me sweeping, and he says, come into my office. I went in there, and he sits down. And he says, how much? With his checkbook. How much? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, $200. And he writes me a check for $200. So the universe will pan those things out. There are people who watch and look and say, well, that guy's just literally doing good things for the community, and it looks like he needs a new pair of shoes. I'm gonna help him out.
Yep.
There are people, turns out they were his sidewalks. He usually pays people to take care of them. Apparently the guy had quit, and there it was needing to be done. And I got into a relationship with this guy working for him for the next couple of years. In fact, I worked off and on for him for like 10 years. We have a great relationship. And so I can't expect a normal person who's just doing the normal thing of working a job and paying the mortgage to start automatically thinking this way. But I can just bear testimony that if we actually just give our time as currency to the things that we think matter, it really does come full circle. It just does. I've seen it again and again and again in ways I can't explain. I can't explain why this happened in my favor. But, because all the details, I don't know. I don't know what's going on behind the curtains. But I've just been living that experience for so long that I am abundant as long as I am giving of my time to things that I feel matter.
Yep, and that reminds me a lot of the book Lead the Field by Earl Nightingale. So huge shout out to Earl Nightingale. He actually learned a lot from Napoleon Hill. So there's kind of a connection between Napoleon Hill with Think and Grow Rich and Earl Nightingale and Lead the Field. But in this book, he says, if you're going to start, and he's talking in the terms of starting a business, but he says, if you're going to start a business, don't worry about the rewards first. Worry about serving the people and find a way to serve the people.
Yeah.
And if you serve enough people, it's impossible for you not to be financially compensated for it.
Yeah.
Or compensated with a meal.
Yep.
Or compensated with a good time with their family. Maybe you went to their house and served by cleaning up their yard with them, and then afterwards you got to hang out with their family. Like, you're going to be rewarded for it. So just to flip that around from what can I get out of this to how can I help others?
Yep, exactly. And that's to come back to our original topic. We were talking about this music thing. I've realized it, for reasons I won't get into right now, it is actually important. In fact, it's dire that we get everyday people coming out and singing their songs for the community, in restaurants, on the street corners, just everywhere, in their homes. And the website, I'm not charging people money to use the website. It's something I see needs to be done to connect artists with venues so they see that there are opportunities and that they're invited to do it. So it's not that I'm trying to build something because I think I can squeeze some money out of people. It's something that I'm building because I think it needs to be done. And it will make me money, I have no doubt. But I'm not going to try to squeeze money out of people to do it. I'm doing it because it needs to be done. And that's like you were just saying. If you look at what the world needs, if you look at how you can serve, it's impossible not to earn a profit off of that.
Yep, I agree 100%. And so this kind of brings me back to Acres of Diamonds by Russell Conwell, which you've read a whole bunch of times, and I have too.
Yep.
Which I was so happy when I found out that you'd read that book. I was like, yes, somebody else has read this book. Such a good book. It's called Acres of Diamonds by Russell Conwell. And so anyways, I think it's Russell Conwell or something. I think that might be right. But Acres of Diamonds, it's an old book. Look it up. So in that book, he talks about finding something where there's a demand. You know, finding something where people, where there's a demand for that thing. Like you notice that people want live music.
Yeah.
But there's a problem. And that problem is copyright infringement or royalty sharing. And what you've discovered through your mind and using your imagination was you realized that there's a solution to this problem, that you can fulfill this demand by creating a website that encourages people and artists to find these venues, to find these restaurants, but they're playing their own music. So it takes away that copyright problem. So that's so cool because it fits perfectly in alignment with the principles of that in that book. So I just wanted to bring that up because it's kind of cool.
Acres of Diamonds is such an awesome way to think about the world. Every one of us is standing on acres of diamonds, but you got to scrape away the soil and look for them to find out what you have of value. There's acres of diamonds right there, man. You have music in your heart that I know is worth millions of dollars. I know that you can, I can see the acres of diamonds in you. You got music and you have joy and light and you want to share that. And so all it takes is putting you in front of some people who will be eating their dinner and it's like, hey, this is nice. Someone's singing to us while we eat and it's uplifting. Hey, I'm going to just throw them a 20. And then you get several people just contributing freely because you uplifted them and made their night more enjoyable. And then you're earning a living. And I think there's way more opportunities for musicians to earn a living than what we've been taught. And so that goes back to the Hollywood conspiracy, how they've created this ideal of the American Idol. And they make us think that either you're going to be this superstar or you're going to be an absolute embarrassment to humanity. I was just talking to my friend last night about this, and it's like either you're going to make billions of dollars and have a gold record and everyone will love you. But then on the flip side of that, you'll also probably die young of drug overdose. So it's like kind of scary, kind of like I want it, but I'm also deathly afraid of it. And then the other extreme would be Simon Cowell told me I'm a piece of crap and I have to hide my face from the world for the rest of my life. It's like one of these two extremes. And that's what prevents people, musicians, mentally from going out there and doing it. That's at the heart. And it's that Hollywood has promoted these artists and made them shine and in the limelight. And then if they fail, they either die or they're an embarrassment for the rest of their life and everyone wants to forget about them. And so we can't imagine for some reason as artists that actually just going and singing in a restaurant is a legitimate job and you can make legitimate pay and you're not going to die of drug overdose and you're not going to have to hide your head in shame. And so that's the other thing besides the copyright, what's going along parallel to the problem is the idea that musicians have about it. So the Acres of Diamonds thing is like, I see diamonds in every musician that I meet. Like you have music and it's valuable, but to get them out there to do it, we got to get past their mindset about it. A lot of musicians, it's crazy and it's been frustrating for a couple of years now as I've been noticing it. When I get together with another musician, it's like, hey, you play guitar? Yeah, I play guitar. Hey. And then they almost immediately go to, hey, you like Ozzy Osbourne? hey, do you like this famous artist? Hey, do you like that famous artist? And they start listing these American idols. And it's like, actually, no, I don't care about any of those people in Hollywood. I don't know them. They don't come over to mow my lawn. They don't do anything for me. I have my own music. You have music. Why can't we talk about us?
Yeah.
Why are we talking about people
Right.
who are far away and sold record albums? And anyway, so that's been a frustration, and it's just showed me what's going on, how the mentality has gotten so backwards.
It kind of creates a dissonance for people where, like you said, where they feel like in order to be considered like a real musician, you have to have this many followers, this many sales. It can't just be like a person that goes out and finds venues. And I bet there's musicians that are small-time musicians that are making probably like $250,000 plus a year, some of them, and just doing music. They're not like superstars, but they have their lives and they have their families.
Oh, yeah.
And in today's world, honestly, the opportunity and the ability to do that has never been so great because of YouTube, because of all the technology that we do have. And yet people still in their minds, a lot of times they have this idea that it's the all or nothing, you know?
Yeah.
And that's just not the reality.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's not the reality. There's vacant spots for a musician everywhere that I look. And that's the thing is people will need a cook in their restaurant, for example, and they put out a help wanted sign. I need help. And so there's a mentality of everyday people looking for help wanted signs. Like, where do I get a job? Where do I get some income? I got to wait for someone to advertise an opening. But if they could train themselves to see openings that no one's advertising for yet, then they would realize there's so many infinite opportunities. When I finally took my guitar just out onto the street, it was just like, I had been doing construction for 10 years and I just wasn't happy. And so I just went out on a limb and took my guitar out on the street and just started singing just out to the open world. No one invited me. No one gave me permission. No one said, hey, man, there's an opening for a musician here on this corner. No one did that. There was no sign. We have to imagine an opening and then go fill that opening and test it. And after one day, singing all day, I sang for like 8 hours, but then I had $100. And it was like, oh, that's what I'm making at my construction job. But this was a lot more fun. and that was day one. You know, I didn't have to wait 2 weeks for the paycheck either. I went straight out to a restaurant and treated myself good and I quit construction from that day on. And I'm not saying that construction's an illegitimate job. In fact, it's totally legitimate. If you're a construction worker, I'm not saying quit. If that's what you want to do, do it. But you can, if you start looking for opportunities that no one's advertising for, you'll find them infinitely. I've been living off of my music for 4 years, and I've hit points where it's like, man, I actually want to go pour some concrete, and I've actually gone out there and poured concrete just because I like the camaraderie of working alongside other men and working up a sweat and working hard and being up early to pour, and then being able to quit by noon, and then I can take my guitar out too. Now I'm making double money. I got paid twice today.
Yep.
And so it's that, and the thing about street performing is that's the bottom rung. So if I can make a living street performing on the bottom rung, then I should be able to earn a pretty fair wage by playing in legitimate venues. And so I'm still graduating to that, and I'm bringing some friends with me. It's like, hey, man, let's go. Let's create a whole network of places to sing.
No, I love what you're doing, man. It is a huge blessing, huge opportunity. My little brother Caleb really enjoyed playing the piano.
We love Caleb too.
He's so
man.
fun.
He's better than he knows. He doesn't give himself enough
I
credit.
know. I always say like he's like a legitimate concert level pianist, and yet he just kind of just like lives every day like he just did.
Yeah, I think the problem with our community is that we're not ready for Caleb Anderson. Like, we don't have a venue that's up to par for what he can produce. So that's our next goal. Is now we got to build a real classy restaurant where it's like super upscale, and there's a grand piano in the center of the restaurant. Like, that's what we got to build next in our town.
That would be so cool. Like to have a restaurant where the purpose of the restaurant is live music and food.
Yep.
And like that's the whole purpose.
Yep.
That'd be so cool.
The piano should be at the middle. We should get a Steinway Grand in the center, and there's tiers of tables where people are eating.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. So, awesome, man.
We've hit a lot of, man,
good points.
I'm on fire.
Yeah, this is fun. I'm glad we did this. So, okay, so what has your personal writing journey looked like recently? Have you been writing new music? Like what have you been doing as far as your own personal music?
My personal music, I'm trying to get started writing my original songs, but in reality, it's having to take a back seat because I'm meeting these other artists who have original songs, but they have no outlet for them, and they have no copyrights on them, and they're just sitting ducks, ready to get picked off by Hollywood scouts who come and stroke their egos and get them to sign them away. So what I'm trying to do is work with the people that I know to actually record their songs and make sure that they are getting their own intellectual property copyrighted and protected. So really, that's just become more of my mission, is working with other artists, and my music is having to take a back seat.
Well, I'm excited for when you do get around to writing some new music again, because you played that one song that you wrote over at my house the other day on the piano.
Sometimes they come out. I can't help it.
So fun to
I'll be
listen
out
to.
in the garden, and all of a sudden, boom! This song's trying to pour out of me. So
Yeah.
that one came out.
That's a sign that you are a true musician, Michael. You know,
It's a 3-chord song, mind you, too.
really.
just 3
Sometimes the
chords that
best ones
repeat.
are like 1 or 2 or 3 chords. You know.
Yeah.
Well, 2 chords, not usually one. One is a. Is there a good 1-chord song?
My friend Greg wrote a 1-chord song that is timeless and
Really?
classic. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it makes people cry every time. And,
Really?
And he doesn't even play.
Oh,
he
Greg.
does- Yeah, Greg.
Oh, yeah, I love
you know
Greg, yeah.
his song. It's his song. It's
Yeah.
like his only song, but man, he captures it, dude.
Yep. Yeah, Greg is awesome. I love his guitars. Shout out to Greg
I wanna
Norton.
Thank you.
Yep.
For every time you touched me.
Yep.
Oh, that is.
He's good for knowing like 0% about how to play the guitar, but
He
just all from the heart,
He
or
just
all
tunes
from
it
the
to
soul.
an open G and just
Yep.
strums that thing.
Yep. Yep, that's awesome. So, and I've been writing a little bit more music lately because I've been focusing on writing Christian music because I have a desire to use music to help bring people to Christ. So I love the fact that you're looking to help artists protect their intellectual property. My grandma, I don't remember who it was, but my grandma knew somebody in her family that wrote some song, and exactly what you're talking about. Somehow the song got out and ended up making somebody else millions of dollars. And it might be a distant relative of mine or one of her friends. I can't remember the exact story, but he didn't get any of the money. So that happens every day, all the time. And people need to be empowered, and it needs to stop, because a lot of people could be greatly blessed for their talents.
Yep.
If it wasn't happening.
Yeah,
So.
I like to paint the analogy. We're probably running pretty far over time.
Oh yeah,
but
I've got to go here soon too. But
I
my
like
dad's calling me because I've got lunch with him. But I figured we'd just
super quick. The
Yeah.
analogy that I like to paint is when you listen to birds singing. I never have seen yet a flock of birds in a tree where 99 of them are sitting there listening, and one of them is going tweet, 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 and the rest of them just sitting there listening, going, "Oh, he's so good. He's so good." That's not
Right.
natural. That's not how God created us. He made us all to sing. We are all songbirds. Everyone has a song in their heart that's valid and should come out. And we can create venues where everyone has their opportunity to sing and get the just reward for that.
Nope, I love that, man. That's a good way,
So
because
we're just bringing the natural balance back to how it should be.
Yep, I agree, and I think the more that people can realize what gifts and talents they have within them, the acres of diamonds that they have inside of them, the more people will feel like they can achieve their dreams, because they can. Nothing's stopping them from being the person they want to be, and their dreams don't have to be the next billionaire or the next Elon Musk or whatever. You don't have to be that.
Yeah.
But go for something that you feel in your heart.
Yeah.
And follow that.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll be guided, and you'll see miracles, and you'll bless the lives of other people for it. I firmly believe that. So, all right. Do you have any plugs, anything you want to tell people to go follow, and any last words, pieces of advice?
Lovesmusicandfriends.com, just if you're a musician or if you have a venue where you want to get some live music in there, go to the website. That's my plug.
Cool. Lovesmusicandfriends.com. Awesome, man. Well, thank you, Michael, for
Thank you, Dallin.
being on the podcast today. I really enjoyed it. We'll have to do it again.
Yeah.
And I think we touched on some awesome subjects, and I hope that it's valuable to the people. So thank you guys for tuning in. We love you. Have a wonderful day. And as always, peace be unto you.
Peace be unto you.
Yes, sir.